Welcome to Was It Worth It, the series that helps you decide if a game will be worth your time, see honest gameplay, and get honest opinions about popular games that I've played. Today I'll be discussing whether or not Pacific Drive was worth it. My name is Tenlow, and before we get into the meat of the video, I wanted to give you an idea of what the game is about, in case you were not already aware. So the game is a survival game where you maintain a car, you give your car upgrades, and while you're driving around this place that's called the Olympic Exclusion Zone, which is a quarantine zone for a sci-fi accident. You'll be scavenging resources all about, and throughout the adventure you'll uncover the mysteries that the world has to offer. Now before we continue, if you either check down in the description or in the timeline of the video, you'll be able to see the different points in the video as well as the spoiler section, so if you want to avoid that you can. To start, let's go ahead and discuss what made this game fun. My favorite part of the game was the maintaining and upgrading my car, excluding one single bit, but I'll discuss that later once we get into the negatives. There's a lot of customization that's available for the car. You can go from giving the car decals, you can paint it, you can switch out different types of doors and panels. There's all kinds of stuff that you're able to do in the game. And as you upgrade, you get more options. When I first was looking into getting the game, this is something that I look forward to, and the game definitely came through on. It was a very enjoyable experience. Look, you even get little figurines that you can put on your dash, and you can even change out your steering wheel eventually. Now for the story, throughout the time I was playing, I found myself looking forward to finding out what was next and learning more about the characters. The game has a very good cast, as well as a few twists and turns in the story that I think you'd enjoy. And as for the game design, there are several features that I wanted to take note of. There's the anomalies, which are kind of like obstacles you're presented with, and they can damage your car. There's one that can throw you up in the air, which can be a lot of fun, but it can be a little bit annoying, but they do a good balance with this game and the anomalies. For me, I had fun with them. It was challenging at times, but overall, it was a good balance of both cool and annoying. As far as the survival aspect of the game and gathering resources, they did a really good job when making this game of what different resources there were, how you gathered them. You can tell that there was a lot of time that they put into this survival system and resource gathering and the different tools that you can use in order to gather said resources. Now, as it is a car game, there is music as well. For those of you who do social media and you want to post this game on your social media, they do give a streamer option, so that way there is no copyrighted content in your videos or stream, which is really nice and shows some foresight on the part of the developers. Now, I did test both modes, the streamer mode and the non-streamer mode. For the streamer mode, there's like 5 or 6 songs, which I found decent. And as for the non-streamer mode, you can definitely tell that there's a lot more options and variety in the music that they have. Personally, I preferred to play this game while listening to my own music in my headphones. It's just like I was driving my car going on a road trip, except with a lot more obstacles and less staring at a blank road. Now, to dive into the things that I did not like about this game, there are a few things that I would have liked to have seen either improved or changed in the game. First of all, and mainly, what bothered me was the quirk mechanic. Occasionally, while you go out through on your drives, your car will develop what are called quirks. And the quirks can range in their seriousness from honestly helpful in some cases to mildly aggravating. For example, one of the good quirks that I got for my vehicle was every time I collected a specific item, it would charge the battery of the car. One of the annoying ones, however, was every time I was on an incline, all of the doors would open. In order to fix the quirks, there is a diagnostic station, essentially, where you can go through and diagnose the issues that you're having. Let's say that every time you turn your steering wheel left, your right door will open. Once you've entered in the suspected causes of the issue, as well as the issue itself that you're having, you'll run the diagnosis, and it will tell you whether or not you're wrong or right. The issue is that you don't have an infinite amount of times that you can enter this in to find out the issue and diagnose it. You have a specific amount of guesses that you can do each time you're at the garage before you complete a trip. So let's say you have 8 guesses in total and you use them all and it says that you got 3 out of 4 correct, but it doesn't tell you which ones. Well, you got 3 out of 4 and you're out of guesses, so you have to go out on a trip and come back to the garage before you'll be able to try again. By which point you could have even more quirks on your car, which could be just as annoying. Now, as for the upgrades, while there are a lot of good upgrades themselves, the process of getting the upgrades can be a bit annoying. This is because it's more of a skill tree. Unlike Minecraft, where you gather the necessary resources and then you can build it. It's not locked behind having progressed in skill. To give you an example as to why I personally found it a little bit irksome at times, there were several points in the game to where I was looking forward to getting something cool, and it was locked behind something that was really just not useful in my opinion because I didn't want to use it. But I still had to unlock that item as well as perhaps another item just to get to the item that I wanted to build. I personally would have found it much more motivating to see the resources that I would need for said upgrade that I'm looking for the vehicle, rather than the system that it currently has. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is that there's no direct way to the later areas in the game without having to go through the earlier areas first, which can be a bit tedious of a task to have to go through that. I guess this stems from the game trying to be a roguelike in a sense. I mean, they do have ways that help expedite the process of getting into the later games that come along as you progress, but it's never to the level of, say, fast travel. Though if the developer's intention was to have this game as a roguelike, I don't believe fast travel would have fit it. Perhaps instead of having a singular garage, you could have had one in each zone that you could start off from, which would have alleviated some of the tedium that the game has, because I don't believe that the roguelike is a perfect fit for this type of game. So perhaps a hybrid of sorts would have been better. This is the part where I start talking about spoilers. So go ahead and skip ahead. It's noted in both the description and the timeline for where the spoilers have finished. Nope, still here? Okay, so to start, there in the map of the exclusion zone is different sections. Each of these sections are zones. There's the first zone, which is almost like a backward L. And you have the center zone, which is just a slightly smaller backward L. And then the third zone, which is the final circle that you can get into later in the game. Now, if you see these roads here, each of these lead to a little village of sorts. Now, in each of these areas, you'll need to go to one of these exits, which will lead you further on your journey. To give you an example as to why I found it a bit tedious to get to the later areas, you see these highways. These highways, without an upgrade, you have to stop in the middle of. It's a short and straight road, but it can still take like maybe 2-3 minutes to get through, maybe 5. And there are some resources that you can gather in there, which can be useful, but when you already have those resources and you're just excited to get to the later area so you can go collect some other resources that you've been looking for or progress in the story, because later in the story you're going to need to be in those later areas, or in zone 2 or zone 3. Zone 2 isn't much of a problem, but mainly zone 3, because at each junction in the highway you'll have to go through one of those towns. Then from there you'll go, if you've progressed far enough, you'll go through another highway and so on and so forth until you reach the final zone. But you'll still have those middle junctions, and yes, it is faster than going off on these branching paths like you see here with the other towns that surround, but it still can take a while, which I did time it. For example, it took me about 20 minutes to get to the third zone. However, one of the upgrades called Junction Bypass essentially allows you to select the furthest highway on a chain of highways and skip the ones that are in between. You'll still have to go through the mini highway junction though, but you'll be able to skip the town. So the last thing I wanted to discuss is the quirk system and the upgrades that you can get to kind of make the process easier, because the devs did realize that this can be a tedious task, and I don't know about you, but I had a difficult time diagnosing without a little bit of help and getting those upgrades that came along later in the game, which did make it easier, but I mean, it still comes at a cost. You have to spend stable energy just to be able to locate which issues you're having in only the first and third columns. You still have to specify in the second and fourth columns what exactly those parts of the car are doing, which definitely goes a long way to help. But between having to spend that energy in order to locate what is wrong, still have the limited guesses, and whenever you finally find the issue, you have to spend resources in order to fix the issue. Now, I'm not saying that I'm opposed to spending resources to fix the issue. The real gripe that I have with this mechanic in the game is being limited guesses, honestly. And even if there weren't limited guesses and you could guess as many times as you wanted, I would still find it a bit tedious. I feel like this mechanic went a little bit far. I understand the idea of it, and it seems like a fun idea, but this more seems like something that you would put in its own dedicated minigame type thing, and not require of the player. Or perhaps instead of giving you quirks that were issues, you could go through this system to give your car little buffs that last for a brief amount of time, or something along those lines. Now, for the question, was it worth it? Specifically, was it worth my time? Yes, it was worth my time, but barely. Also, I don't think that this game is for everyone. But before I explain, I'd like to clarify that I do believe this game is still worth recommending to others because it was both a unique experience and I had a lot of fun while playing it. While I enjoyed the story, anomalies, resource gathering, and the experience of upgrading and maintaining my car, there were points in the game where, especially in the middle, where I found the game to be tedious. Like I mentioned earlier, the quirk system, and the way that you have to travel, starting from the shop every single time to get to the later areas. I found myself with those spans of time where I was just slugging through it so that I could get to those later areas, and I really didn't care about anything else that was going on. Mostly what I could do to kind of mitigate this was listening to my own music, and that wasn't even part of the game. I did find myself at times with this game where I would be finished for the day, and I would come back the next day or perhaps the day after, and I wouldn't find the motivation to want to come and play the game because I knew that in order to get to the things that I wanted to do, I would have to go through a lot of tedious things. Felt a little bit like a chore to play at times. Now, I still would like to rate the game because I consider that separate from whether or not I found it worth my time. After all, I work full time, so my time is very valuable to me, as I'm sure your time is valuable to you. Now, for those of you who prefer a more traditional rating system, I would give this game a 7 out of 10. Yep, I know it might be a bit of a surprise, but it really did have heart in the game, and I did enjoy this game. So yes, 7 out of 10 is the rating that I would give it. Thank you for having watched this far. I very much appreciate you having stuck through it with me and having heard everything that I have to say, honestly. Again, my name is Tenlow, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you feel that I have earned it. I would very much appreciate it, and I hope you have a great and amazing day.